Local programming on KRWG made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Fronteras, a Changing America. I'm Edmundo Resendez. When a group of professional artists teamed up with a property developer, the result was a new space in Rochester, New York that brought the artists together under one roof and boosted business for many of them. Here's a look at Made on State.
Made on State is a collective of professional working artists and other creative individuals that are able to come together and create amazing things both individually and as a group.
It was kind of a match made in heaven when we ran into this particular group. I really wanted to make sure I put some people in here that were going to engage the area. I didn't want to see people that were just going to be contained in the building.
For me personally, one of the most exciting parts of this was working with a developer who was on cue with the vision that we brought to the table. I think the idea of having some professional artists who not only want to grow their business and find a space where they can really dig roots, but also want to work within the community. We're looking forward to doing workshops and classes that'll be open to the public that people can participate in.
There's so much of Made on State that is shared space that allows for cooperation between artists, that allows for expansive projects and teaching classes and bringing people in. Being surrounded by other artists means there's an opportunity for me to watch and learn and be part of something bigger than just my own art. Collaboration could be anything from, full project, every bit of the project, every detail is shared, or it could be everybody working on their own thing and occasionally asking for assistance.
There's a couple people here that are in marketing and branding. I'm always trying to figure out how to kind of refine my brand. I get a lot of help with stuff like that. People also come to me if they need a random part made or, holes drilled in a piece of metal or just advice on how to build something physical.
The media that we all work in is so different. There are sometimes solutions to problems right under your nose that you never thought of because it never came up in what you work with.
We're a collective, supportive community. If any of us has a question that relates to somebody else's expertise or skill set, it's very easy just to run over and get some professional feedback from those people.
I heard about this building through origami. I was looking to move out of my basement shop. As soon as we saw it, we kind of just knew, this is a good spot. I have 4 times as much space now. Yeah, the space is always awesome for manufacturing. It's allowed me to take on more work at once, and it's allowed me to take on bigger jobs than I could do at my home-based shop. And the visibility is a lot greater too. I'm getting a lot more social engagement. I'm learning a lot from businesses that have grown.
I've already superseded where I was a year ago, and I'm taking in many more orders than I have before. And I've been able to design and create the type of space to facilitate the business and what I really want to give to my clients.
What we're trying to create, and I think the city wants, is connectivity. And I'm trying to create a piece of that from High Falls to hit the St. Paul Quarter. We're trying to, do our part here and do it well.
Lucas Herndon has lived his entire life in Doña Ana County, although he was born in Tucson, Arizona. He graduated from Mayfield High School and got his bachelor's degree in history at NMSU. Lucas found a calling to become involved with advocacy for our local public lands. He was hired as the executive director of the Friends of the Oregon Mountains Desert Peaks and worked with a broad coalition of local folks to see the designation of that national monument. He's worked in the solar industry as well, and now works with Progress Now in New Mexico as both the communications manager and the community engagement. Lucas Herndon is our guest today on Fronteras and Changing America as we discuss citizen activism. Lucas, welcome to Fronteras.
Thanks for having me, Edmundo.
Now, you graduated from NMSU in 2006.
That's right.
Tell me, did you know in 2006 that you would be a citizen activist?
I had no idea back then at all. I really didn't know what I was going to be doing. I had a young family, and I was working at a used bookstore here in town, Coas Books. And at the time, I was just excited to kind of keep learning and enjoy my community.
Tell me, what made you decide to become a citizen activist?
Well, actually working at Coas Books, I saw the owner, Mike Beckett, be involved in the community. He was very involved with the Main Street project and some other projects around town, and I saw the impact that one person in the community could take if they put themselves out there, and it was really inspiring. I also grew up seeing my dad involved with some, working in the legislature on medical issues. He's a physician. And so I guess there was a little bit of background for me on that, but it came into being when I was running my own business, and I got involved with the...
You weren't in the insurance business.
I was in the insurance business, yeah. I opened up my own insurance practice. At the time, I was just looking for a profession that would allow me to start networking and working with people in the community. And one of the best places I found to do that for me was with the Las Cruces Green Chamber of Commerce.
And so what happened next after you started your own company? You saw yourself as a business owner.
Yeah, I ran my insurance agency, worked with local business owners, and working with their employees to get them supplemental insurance. And while I enjoyed working with people like that, what I really was enjoying was talking to those business owners and getting to know how they made an impact in the community. And so, as my own business owner, I was looking to get more involved with that. At the Green Chamber of Commerce, I came into connection with people that were working on the monument issue, and through networking with them, found the opportunity to come on as the executive director for the Friends Group.
How was that experience?
Well, it was a high learning curve to not only become involved in advocacy, but to be the executive director of an organization. Learning to write grants, working with a broad coalition that was not only local, but we had advocates all around the state were helping us, and I had the opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. a couple times and advocate for our monument there. So it was a whirlwind. Working on federal policy to protect lands in our own backyard was, it really shows the sort of expanse of governance that exists in our community.
Let's talk about resistance. Did you see any resistance come from the designation of the national monument?
Well, there was a lot of unknowns, I think, for people in the community. The kinds of national monument that the Organ Mountains Desert Peaks is part of the conservation lands, which is a relatively new idea. It's only been around since the mid-1990s, and so people's thoughts about what national monuments or national parks are has more to do with bigger things like White Sands or the Grand Canyon or Yosemite. Multi-use national monuments that the BLM manages, like I said, are just in the American consciousness are sort of a new idea. And so it was really an educational campaign. It was about bringing in a diverse group of people, so working with sportsmen, sportswomen, multi-use people that use horseback riding trails, recreational shooters, mountain bikers, hikers, birders, all those groups, and reassuring them that this was about maintaining that access to those public lands that we all love to use, and protecting them specifically from development from the private sector. And that's exactly what the monument designation did. And I think it came about because the community really came together and saw that that was what we were working on.
With this project, you work with a broad group of people, everyday citizens that wanted this national monument. What steps did those citizens take to get the monument done?
Yeah, that's a great question. We had all kinds of fun activities, from hikes and activities that happened on the land, star watching parties at night, field trips to see petroglyphs that are within the monument, historical reenactments here in the community. In Mesilla, for instance, where the Butterfield Stagecoach line came in and Billy the Kid's trial was, and There are ties to both of those things within the monument, and we had a really great series of concerts at the Rio Grande Theater in support of the monument. And then, of course, some more direct action where you saw citizens go to the city of Las Cruces, the city of Mesilla, the county, and ask for those local governmental bodies to pass resolutions in support, which they did, and ultimately led to support for the monument on a whole.
Let's talk about what are some initial steps an everyday citizen or resident can take to become politically active?
Sure. Well, right now we're seeing a lot of that happen. The political climate has shifted in the last 6 months, and we're seeing a lot of people get active and have that exact question. Traditional things like writing letters to the editor, directly contacting legislators. I mean, these are things that have been around for a long time and always been a part of a citizen's toolbox, but I think you're seeing it exercised more and more now. And then I think with the addition of social media, you're seeing those movements happen quicker, and they happen with more effect because people are able to disseminate their ideas so quickly amongst their own networks.
You said the last 6 months. Tell me, what issues are you looking at in the political world that have changed for you as an everyday citizen in the last 6 months?
Well, I mean, as an everyday citizen, I've experienced, I guess, what can only be described as a fear or a trepidation over a rolling back of some of the things that have happened in the last 8 years under President Obama, including healthcare issues, immigration issues, and that those are affecting people in our community, and they're worried about what's going to happen to them, and so they're standing up and taking notice. They're writing to their congresspeople. They're going to city council meetings more. As an organizer, one of the things that has been really noticeable is that in the months before the election, it was you're running a lot of get out the vote campaigns, and it's difficult, or it was difficult, to get people to come volunteer for a phone bank or go knock on doors. It was always sort of the same group of people doing those kinds of activities locally. And now, I mean, there's not almost an hour that doesn't go by that I'm getting a text message or an email from somebody asking how they can get involved, or what's the status of this thing and how do we keep on top of it. So people are really taking a personal interest in these things.
I'm going to try to put this as easy as possible, but I mean, how challenging is it to be out there on a day-to-day basis and have to answer so many different political issues are happening that people are looking to you to be an expert on these issues and looking for that advice as to what they can do?
Yeah, I mean, it can be difficult and definitely wearing. I think fortunately, I've been lucky enough to work with and meet people all around the state that are working on all these different issues. And so
it's a broad network.
It's a broad network, and so I think for me, one of the things that I enjoy doing most is helping to connect those voices. So when a friend of mine in my own personal network is deciding that the healthcare issue, for instance, is really important to them, and they want to know how they can best, be active, it's a privilege then to be able to say, well, this group locally or that group at the state level, is always looking for volunteers to help canvass, or to write a letter to the editor if you want to sign your name to something, and make those connections.
What does it take to become a citizen activist? And I'm going to take it a step further and say a resident activist, because there's legal U.S. residents that are in this country that have political stakes in what's happening.
Sure. Well, I think one of the things that is worth talking about is the idea of privilege, that many of us in our lives have the privilege to have free time, have a little bit of extra money, have a position in our community that gives us a little bit of a voice where people are listening to what we're saying. And so at that level, one of the things that we should be doing as sort of our duty as people with privilege is to stand up and tell stories and be a placeholder for those people who can't be seen. So as recently as last week, we saw protests here in Las Cruces at the Border Patrol checkpoint that folks from the that cafe had organized, along with the ACLU and the Dream Team here in New Mexico, and one of the things that was really poignant to me was that there was a state legislator out there who, that's exactly what he said. He says, I'm standing up for the people who can't be out here because they very really are afraid that if they come out in public, they could be deported or their families could be broken up. And so taking that step as a person who has that privilege to not be at risk for those things, I think that's one of the most important things people can do, is to stand up and speak for those people who don't have a voice or aren't as heard as much.
How has social media changed the social activism game?
Well, I think clearly there's a certain amount of accountability that has happened in more of a real time. We see, for instance, in Black Lives Matter movement, that cell phone footage of police shootings that have then gone on to hold police accountable has helped to move the narrative forward that this is an issue in our country. Similarly, at local town halls all across the country, where those used to be just sort of broadcast on the news, they're now being aired in real time as people go live on Facebook or on whatever other platform. And so people that couldn't be at that event are aware that it's happening right now, and so they become a part of the process, speaking about it on social media. So there's a big part of the shift is that accountability, that people can't sort of say thing and then back away from it. You have to always assume you're on camera saying something.
Let's talk about tools.
Yeah.
What are some of the tools that you use to be a citizen activist?
Sure. Well, certainly social media is a big part of it. People have jobs, people are in school, people have family obligations, so they can't go to every little thing. So organizing with social media, allowing people to know that there's something happening in their community by making Facebook events or being able to share something within your network, that's a major tool. And then there are some more traditional tools in terms of looking for media opportunities where that traditional media sources will come out and cover what you're trying to say. And then I think the direct lobbying is something that it's existed for a long time, so it's not really a new tool, but you're seeing it happen more where people are taking the time every day to call not just state legislators or federal our federal delegation, but even county commissioners and city councilors, and letting them know what matters to them in their communities.
How has citizen activism changed in the last 6 months?
Well, as I was alluding to earlier, I think people have settled into a sense of complacency, and so when you're used to things sort of moving at a predictable pace, let's say at the federal level, you can sort of settle in, and you don't necessarily think that every single day is going to be such a big news day. I think that no matter what side of the political aisle you're on, there's no doubt that the political landscape just completely flip-flopped 6 months ago with the election of Donald Trump. I think, again, it doesn't matter which side you're on, there's just clear evidence that everybody is paying more attention and sort of analyzing every little thing that's being said. No administrative thing is now being dismissed as just an administrative thing. There's always these deeper implications, and what does it mean, and a breakdown of it. So I think that analysis has led people to understand that all these little things that make up government as a whole are important, and it's worth noting, and it's worth understanding how those processes are put in place.
Let's talk about your activism. Is there any one event that has been memorable to you where you picked up the phone, used social media, and expected a turnout that turned out to be bigger than you initially thought it would be, and had some long-lasting impact?
Absolutely. Earlier this year, there was some real consternation in the community when our own representative Steve Pearce had not. The community felt like he hadn't been back to the district quick enough after the election of Donald Trump to let us air our grievances with how the federal government was going to be moving forward and as he was going to be representing us. And so local Indivisible group organized a gathering, and that's really all it was initially, was a gathering at Steve Pearce's office to try to be heard and to deliver some letters because they hadn't been let into his office. And I went just to participate and see how big it got and whatever was going to happen with it, and utilizing tools including our cell phones, which I think is one of the best organizing tools we all have. I was able to capture footage of one of his staff members leaving the back door, and that story, as I caught it on camera, gained a lot of traction. In fact, it went national, and Fox News even picked it up and went with it. So that was a real surprise to me to see that our little action there spawned such a national interest, and then the following week inspired over 300 people to come out in front of his office and hold a mock town hall meeting. And so it was a sort of a twofold event, but that was really surprising me. I hadn't seen anything like that happen in Las Cruces really before.
And then Congressman Steve Pearce came to Ruidoso, and you saw a large contingent of people from Doña Ana County go to Ruidoso for that. Tell me, how fired up were the constituents when they got to see Congressman Steve Pearce at that point? Yeah,
that was, that was an impressive turnout. It was 2 hours away, right, in a different county, and I think that even though he ultimately did come back to Las Cruces and hold a town hall, there was still a feeling that people from Doña Ana County, which constitutes his largest singular part of his district in terms of population, that we had been asking very loudly for a town hall, and he chose to not come there first. He chose this sort of out of the way space, and people were fired up, and they went out there, and some people even went and stayed the night before just to make sure that they could get there in time.
Brought in tourism dollars.
Yep, that's true. That happened.
And so, what happened at the event?
He answered questions for over 2 hours. It was a little rowdy at some points in time. There was some consternation from people about healthcare specifically. There was a lot of questions about where Pearce stood on the president's personal behavior, some of his private business dealings, and the conflicts of interest. So there was a lot of that happening. And then since we're speaking about organizing, I think one of the things that was interesting to me was that the congressman sort of went out of his way to single me out because I was filming the event again, and he made note that I was there and that he was going to answer my question because otherwise I might publish another bad story about him. So I guess that's my point about organizing, is that when you are consistent and you use that voice, you can really get results, and you can see they're tangible.
Should citizens consider running for office to actually get things done when they get to the point where they're not happy with their local politicians?
I mean, yeah, I think that's the whole point of democracy, is that we can elect anybody from within our ranks of citizenship. And so I think that when people get to that point where they are fed up enough or think that they have an idea of how better to serve the community, I think that that's when people do step up. There's a lot of ins and outs of politics, and there's a culture within politics, especially for people who've been in seats for a really long time. And one of the things we sort of see consistently, and this is again true with our current national situation, is that when somebody who comes in from the outside, it really does shake things up, and it brings about new ideas, good or bad. And so, yeah, I would absolutely encourage citizens that, if they're in a district and they don't feel happy with what is being represented by their local representative, whatever level that is, to go ahead and make that run.
Let's talk about some offices that people can consider running for. There's city council, of course. There's county commission. There's also the water district campaign that was news to me, that suddenly has become very high profile.
Yeah, so about 5 years ago, about 5 years ago, when we were working on the monument campaign very dedicatedly, it came to our attention that there was this soil and water conservation district, and they were working on passing a tax. And we were all sort of caught off guard by it. And when we started looking into it, we realized that that board had put a lot of effort into working against the monument and passing resolutions and attending meetings with groups of people that were opposed to it.
This is an under the radar group.
Yeah, yeah. But they are democratically elected, and they have and they're governmental. They have a budget. It's not a big budget, but they have a budget and they have a mission. And so there's there's soil and water conservation districts. There are school boards. There are rural water boards. There are neighborhood associations. No matter what political party or of the two major ones you're in, there are political parties that have their own elected officials that you can participate in. That's another one of the hats that I wear. I'm the district director for District 33 for the Doñana County Democrats. And so,
which is an office you ran for.
Yeah, I mean, within our own county Democrats, it is an office I ran for, yeah.
What are some disadvantages to being a citizen activist?
Well, it's not a 9-to-5 job. It's not uncommon to have late night events. It's not uncommon to have after hour meetings that as a parent sometimes I have to drag my daughter to, and it can be taxing sometimes. But it's when you see those tangible rewards, it's usually very rewarding.
Lucas Herndon, thank you very much for joining us here on Fronteras Changing America. We look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you, Edmundo.
Thank you for joining us on Fronteras Changing America. I'm Edmundo Resendez.